about what the early years means. Why is that period special? Is this just another developmental stage that everybody gets through, or is there something unique about those first few years of life? There are loads of different perspectives to approach this question, but the one I always like to start with is biological. Neuroscientists have known for decades that young children experience a spectacular amount of brain growth. And actually, on some measures in some parts of the brain, the density and the complexity of the brain's architecture peaks between the ages of 2 and 5. Young children's brains are like sponges. They're experiencing everything for the first time, and they're cataloging all of those experiences, trying to draw connections between them. Of course, some of those connections are more sound than others. I remember when I was growing up, I would always go with my mother to the grocery store, and we'd come down to pay for the groceries. She would reach into her wallet, hand over some money to the cashier, and then invariably the cashier would reach into her till and hand money back to my mother. So as a child, I saw this a few times and decided that giving money was really strongly connected to getting money back as a gift or something. Obviously, that connection wasn't quite in the right way that it should have been. I needed to learn about the idea of math and change and getting money back because you're adding up to a whole. So saying that architecture peaks between the ages of 2 and 5 doesn't mean that nothing else happens during childhood and adolescence. Far from it. That process of pruning through these connections, identifying which ones are important, strengthening the ones that we really want to have, and letting some of the less important ones go, that's really essential too. But nevertheless, having a better database of early experiences and a tidier set of connections between them can be really helpful when it comes to trying to learn something later on. My guess is that a lot of garden reviewers have experienced this personally. Imagine you're watching a talk on the history of the Spanish Civil War, and then a few months later, you're watching a lecture on art history, and you start to learn about the Guernica. Now, you're going to have a much easier time appreciating the anti-war messages and the nuances that Picasso put into that painting because you have that knowledge base to draw on from the earlier lecture. What that means is that we end up in a framework where skills beget skills. The more you know, the more ability you have, the easier it is for you to take that next step on your learning journey. And that's another reason why the early years is such a particularly important time. Because if we are able to make a change in those first few years of life to make it easier for children to learn, that's not just something that'll help them in kindergarten or in first grade. That's something that could potentially shape the learning trajectory that they're on for the rest of their lives.